Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Tuesday, January 24th, and we are here at the beginning of week 4. You've entered the home stretch, uh, getting kind of through the peak of the class through week 3. You just turned in your week 3 game composition for Palace of Orinthalion, and you submitted the orchestral template to build your session from. And we are going to, like we have in our previous Tuesday sessions, we're going to start with a review of your Palace of Orinthalion submissions. We have 12 student submissions across here, and you can see the 4 different tracks. And we'll talk about how everything is working and will be set up. And then we have a couple of new assignments. Oh, look, it looks like I opened up week 3. I should probably open up the correct set of slides. But we'll get into the week 4 assignments. It certainly does lighten up quite a bit here in week 4 because we do not start a brand new game composition because we do not have a week 5 to do peer review and revisions and all of the necessary steps. So in week 3 here, you finish out with the sound design for Angry Bots, and you are also going to do another pass of screen captures for each one of your game projects. Let's see here. I think I have the slides here. So, right, week 4, sound effects delivered. Okay, looks like we are good. So here in week 4, you will be submitting the sound design for Angry Bots and doing a final round of game captures with all of your revised sound design. Revised composition and sound design. So we will get into that. Kind of the same flow as the rest of our Tuesday sessions. And we kind of round out the month on Thursday with a discussion of topics getting into the industry. One of the big focuses or intentions of this class is to really expose you to the game industry and show you that your music is just as viable in a video game as it is in any other media, and to show you the kind of role of a music composer in a game project and the skills that are involved in that, and just kind of the overall production process for music and sound effects in games, to give you a sense of whether this is the type of work or the part of the industry that you might be interested in looking into further. And so we give you some resources in how to find clients and how to find projects and how do you get started, demo reel material and networking and all of the tools specific to the game industry. Some of it is certainly applicable in all facets of the industry, and some of the resources are a bit more specific to games overall. But that's the last week kind of is wrapping up all of the projects that you've worked on and preparing them for a final capture that can be added to your portfolio, your demo reel, posted on a website. You have now 3 working, functioning Mac games with your music and your sound effects, and you can deliver or you can distribute the game itself. You have video captures, just gathering all of the media together as best as you can to kind of represent your music and your work with these game projects. So that's where we are headed here in the last week. But to start out, let's take a look at the submissions from the Palace of Orinthalion from week 3. Like I mentioned, we have a total of 12 submissions up here, and we have the 4 layers, the earth, fire, water, and wind layer. and I am going to play the part of the game engine and mix the levels up and down. So remember, as you enter and turn on and off a piece of music out of any one of the 4 doorways in the game, effectively it's taking the fader and going from negative infinity up to unity. It takes about 3 seconds to do that fade and then back. So as we demonstrated, you can walk out of any one of the 4 doorways and in any sort of order turn on and off different pieces of music and have them combine. So we're also going to layer these together. Looks like my inputs are following me here. So what else do we need to discuss? I think that will be good. Hold on. That meter's going to bother me. It says we have no input device. Yet you're following my input device. Let's change it to something that should not have input. No input. Okay, let's make sure that we can hear something. So I'm going to turn this down, turn that up, and give me a heads up in the chat that you can hear this. Whatever it is. I'm sure I can hear this. Hold on. I think I can hear that. Yes, and if I turn it down here, you can still hear me. And all right, move my microphone here a little bit. All right. Good. Excellent. That sounded good. All right, let's jump back over here. Start at the front of the group and work our way through. So I'll start out by discussing overall how this project should work. Certainly you've got a pretty solid idea going through all the materials and doing the project, but we'll talk about some of the main things that we are listening for as we go through each one of these. So you have 4 layers, 4 wave files that should be either 16 bars or 32 bars long. Each one of them are going to set up to loop. The 4 of them should start at the same time, they should end at the same time, and they should be able to loop together. So just taking a quick look at all of these as I was importing, none of these really had any issue in that regard. They look from the front to the top to the tail, they look like, at least visually, they could be pretty consistent. And when looping 4 pieces of music together, sometimes if you have of them that, let's say 3 out of the 4 loop just fine, one of them may be questionable, a lot of times that can be hidden by multiple layers playing together. So if you were playing multiple cues, maybe you wouldn't actually be able to notice that loop issue. The other side of that is if 2 or 3 or all 4 of them have loop issues, then when it does loop, it kind of amplifies the issue or problem or overall. So always something to pay attention to, whether it's obvious gaps, pops, clicks, or whether it's more of a kind of a reset of the instrumentation, where all of a sudden the bows just started moving again, or their breath started over again, and the attack of the notes, that could be a nice title. The attack of each one of the notes kind of swells back in. So looping files, they're all going to play at the same time. One of the biggest challenges of this composition, of this project, is making sure that all of the layers can work and play together in any sort of combination. So any 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the cues have the opportunity of playing together at the same time. And so you have to make sure that each cue works with all other of the cues. So that means really the main challenge here becomes the composition itself, the notes. It's not necessarily your choice of instrumentation at this point. It's not your mix. It's not whether it loops or not. One of the biggest issues that becomes very present or very obvious is if you have any clashing notes, any clashing rhythms, harmonies, anything that gets in the way of or causes obvious issues and dissonance in the track. So to avoid this, we suggested that you probably would start with just the composition. Start out probably on a piano, writing your chord progression, writing a series of melodies, and then using all of the voices and the notes that you've generated to interpret different lines for the different instruments that you use. And then you start considering the instrumentation of the project. We talked about the different themes of the cues. The earth was represented the hero and the start of the hero's journey. The fire cue represented the battles and the action in the game. The water cue represented the emotional twists and turns or ups and downs through the storyline. The wind cue represented a stealth element or maybe a little bit of foreboding or danger that's coming up in the game. So with each kind of a theme to each one of them, your choice of instrumentation should fit that underlying theme. A big one overall for the project is you are restricted to acoustic and orchestral instrumentation. So to fit the overall theme of the game or the time period of the game, we try to keep in that sort of instrument group. Avoiding the synths and sticking mainly to your sample libraries. So if we find anything in there that's more of a synthetic nature, and of course that even translates over to your performance of the instruments themselves. You want to try to create as realistic of a performance from these instruments. So then that becomes a lot of the challenge in the instrumentation and the production of the cues. What else? So your composition, your instrumentation. We talked about looping. The overall mix. Let's see if I can fit these all together here. There we go. Like I mentioned before, the faders in the game or the volume control, all it does is go from negative infinity up to unity. Fades over 3 seconds. So if the player walks out all 4 of these doorways, there is a chance that 4 of the cues play together. And you want to make sure when if the fader is at the stereo output, the main output of the game, if that is at unity, you are not completely destroying the output. You're not overloading or clipping the main output. So we'll pay attention. We'll play all 4 of these together. Typically, I can't actually crank this all the way up to unity. If it's a really loud piece of music and I bring this all the way up, it kind of overloads the broadcast and everything. So I'll maybe get up there and see if we're approaching 0 overall. But we want to watch out for that. These layers or levels of each one of these cues might be a bit loud. All 4 of these together might overload the master. And you want to make sure, like these might be a problem. Now you want to make sure that it's not, and I don't see any waveforms that look like they're almost invisible, but you need to get a solid level off of each one of the cues without overloading the master when they're played together. All right. Composition, instrumentation, like the overall theme or aesthetic of the game, looping, mixing. That sounds like most of the things we are paying attention to. So I'll go through these and we'll jump around in different combinations to hear what we find. So let's start out on our first one. Set up our loop. Let's try that again. Great. So the flute line works very well. Very kind of bouncy and very melodic. Works nicely. Some percussion in the back. Some handheld percussion, gives a little bit of the pace. I'm hearing the harmonic instrumentation in there. I'm thinking that's some woodwinds. The flute kind of dominates the rest of the harmonic instrumentation, which is kind of okay because it is really a nice focal point, but could probably bring those up in the mix a little bit. I'm going to jump over to the wind cue. Great, we've got some pizzicato in there, works nicely. All right, so we got some nice string layers there. Like I said, I definitely like what the pizzicato is doing to provide still a little bit of that rhythm, a little bit more movement overall. Typically, I do warn against using one instrument family for a cue, like just having strings. I typically would prefer to have a mixture overall, and in this wind cue, a lot of the instrumentation works in the lower registers, so maybe add some low brass in there, some of the lower winds to kind of operate in that area, fill up the low range. Then maybe keep that string line and the pizzicato in the higher range to mix it up a bit. But compositionally, what you're playing there works nicely. All right, we're going to go to the fire cue. The dynamics of the fire cue just concern me a little bit. Just looking at the waveform. Let's check this out. All right, there's all the brass. Really good stuff. Again, compositionally, really nice, great movement, harmonic movement, lead line, works well. Yeah, the mix, like when those cymbal crashes hit, really don't have a strong dynamic to them, strong attack to them, or don't really kind of separate themselves in the power of the mix. Everything just kind of seems flat all the way across. You could probably move some of the strings from the wind cue into the fire cue, again, to mix up, not just have brass in this one and the strings in the other one. Move some of those layers, have like a string ostinato pattern in the background that's on like a triplet pattern, could work. All right, what else we got? Water cue. Now, this water cue, like the level of this compared to the levels of like the earth and the fire, feels like it might get lost a little bit. Yeah, because it's a lot kind of thinner sounding overall. Great. Again, melodic lines work nicely. Harmonically, you got the harp playing in the background, choirs. Just want to listen to these. All right, let's go ahead and bring them all in together. Yep, works nicely. Everything fits nicely together, follows that main progression. You've got the different melodies working against each other, different instrumentation and different ranges, work nicely. I'm going to say mix and instrumentation overall, and like kind of rearranging I think the water and the earth might be fine in their instrumentation, but rearranging some of the instruments from the fire and the wind cue. All right, let's bring all these back. Nice work. Good stuff. I'll try the next one here. All right. So, is this, I'm going to count this here. Looks like 8 bars. We need 16 bars overall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8 bars. So, watch out for that. Could definitely extend it out. Also move away from the repetition in the I guess it's a woodwind. Da 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 da. Then you got another phrase. Da 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 da. You kind of repeat it again here. Percussion works. I think there's a guitar in the background as the harmony that works. Let's jump over here to the winds. Alright, so I think you cover the low end nicely with the low strings and like a contrabassoon in there. Right, so I think keep what you have there, maybe like add a low pulse, just a low big bass drum hit, and then add another layer in the higher registers as a lead line that balances all this low end. I mean, I guess there's not like, frequency-wise, there's not a bunch of low end, but in the range of the instruments. Alright, percussion works nicely. What you have compositionally works with between the brass and the strings. I would say maybe the brightness of the brass and the strings. It kind of sounds like the velocity of the notes is farther down, so that the real strength and the brightness, the brassiness of the brass could come forth a bit more. But I guess the 8-bar loop is also making it feel very repetitive as it goes around. Could definitely use more time to change and develop. Choir works nicely. Watch out for that little pause there. Well, it sounds like, I guess everybody takes a breath. Where is it? Over here? Maybe that little fade? Because it looks okay over here. Anyway, seems like a little pause in there. Let's bring them all together. I think everything fits nicely. You would say certainly develop the second 8 bars through the cues. Watch some of the repetitive notes in there. Maybe add a few layers overall to build it out. But I think the base structure of what you have there works nicely. All right. So, for those of you in the chat, overall, what were some of any challenges? Any, like, oh, this totally didn't work, or hey, I took this approach and it worked just fine. What were kind of the more of the difficult areas to work on as we were going through? We'll start the next one here. Feels very mono. Feels like everybody's lined up in a straight line. I think the upright bass sounds a little out of place with the aesthetic of the cue. Even the ensemble string staccato part is a little bit big overall. The general intention with this cue is that these would be characters actually in the game playing their parts. They would actually have to bring their instruments out. So if it's a small group of bards or local entertainers in the town or the pubs or something like that in this story, in this game, then you need to have these characters playing smaller instruments. Like instead of an ensemble string, just a single fiddle. Instead of a whole brass section, maybe just a couple of woodwinds. Instead of large percussion overall. Like I'm picturing the guy bringing out his upright bass into the middle of the street and having to play along with that. So maybe appropriateness of the instrument here, just instrumentation, kind of bring it into a smaller section. A couple of comments here in the chat. Taylor, honestly, the audio skips so bad live that I'm having a hard time hearing everything clear enough to make any comments. Interesting. Are other folks having that issue? Is the broadcast breaking up here? Cristobal, I was afraid a lot of the notes overlapping. I think I maybe having instruments being less busy would help everything stand out without overcrowding. Yes. The density of the composition can become a challenge because by itself it's not so bad. 2 parts, 3 parts, it starts getting a little bit more cluttered, and by the time you put everything together, where you might not have been composing like that, there's not much reason to listen to everything all the time. So you get deeper and deeper into the tracks and you start going back and unmuting things and bringing it all together. And you have a lot of movement overall. So, but that's a lot of times it's easier to delete and filter stuff out than it is to add new stuff in. So that'll work. In the chat, admittedly, I'm having the same issue. I can get the gist of the melodies, but the live playback doesn't have any low end. I wonder if that is the broadcast overall. I'm on a wired network connection. Interesting. Well, we'll full version of this, the archive, should be a high quality capture overall. All right, let's switch on to the wind cue. All right, so we got some brass layers in here. Feels like there's an organ part in the background. Almost feels like a synth in some sort of way. And just maybe some of the attack of it. So I'd probably keep the brass layers, maybe add a little bit of low percussion, but I think the organ part kind of gets in the way rhythmically of some of the other layers. Let's try the fire cue. There we go. So this works very well. The staccato feeling of the strings, the brass, and the percussion along with it would make a great action cue. Yeah, in the live broadcast, this one should have some good thump overall from the kick drum, and I can understand that maybe still trying to push a high quality mix through the go-to training broadcast might not be coming through at the quality that we want. All right, let's bring in the water cue. All right, nice. Choir works. Probably need some other elements to support that choir. I mean, it's probably a good place to bring in the organ from the wind cue and maybe even do like a pipe organ kind of feel through the water cue along with the choir. Could probably work because the lines that you have in here almost feel like it's a synth. Maybe it's the kind of the fast staccato. I'm looking for more sustain. All right. Now let's bring them all together. Oops, I'll do that. Again, listening to this, it sounds very mono overall, so work on the spread of the instruments, especially when I bring all the layers together. Yeah, those organ parts kind of stick out a bit, and this adds a nice... All right, so again, what you have there, the components work well. Definitely, like I said, I like the fire cue overall. Just work on some of the organ layers and moving some of the instrumentation around to more appropriate cues. So, so far what we have heard, like the basic function of the music has worked. You've overcome the hurdle of the most challenging part of 4 layers, rhythmically, melodically, harmonically, working and playing together. So that's the core skeleton or structure that you can then hang and do all sorts of different stuff with. So some good woodwind layers. Some flutes and just a couple other lines to support it. Snare line. All right. Should be a good foundation for the other cues. So a good progression that will work. The other woodwinds are kind of playing through here, and then they stop really kind of quickly before or as it loops around. So maybe just a little bit more of the layers through that first couple of notes. And again, I might suggest not just having a single instrument family, but mixing it up between the different cues. We'll listen for what other instruments show up through the mix. Watch that loop, pops a little bit. Good choice of instrumentation. Lush and a lot of movement in there. Got the clarinet kind of playing the lead line. Lower brass. Again, probably could add just a little bit of percussion to kind of keep that pace going. Just often a big bass drum, a pulse would help. Let's check out the fire cue. Cymbals really quite loud in the mix. The rest of that brass can really needs to be able to punch through quite a bit more. Actually, yeah, it's mostly strings. There's some brass back there, but it's buried way back. But first and foremost, I hear percussion, then I hear strings, then I hear way back there, I hear some brass. Brass could really be used to provide the power and brightness for this cue, and then probably just more activity from the percussion. Almost feels like a bridge where the drummer switched to the ride cymbal and needs just more energy throughout. So there's some good harmony layers, harmonic layers playing together, some good movement. I can't really identify one of them as the lead melody. Mostly are moving together with the chord changes. So try to identify one lead element and focus on or put a spotlight on it through the cue. But I think all these are going to fit just fine together. They all seem to follow the same thing. Now, with all the different instrument layers, you're going to have to work on the clarity of the mix. Some of them do operate in a lot of the mids and low mids. There's a lot of sustained instruments throughout, so you could use some staccato lines to add a little bit more of the kind of crispness to the rhythm of each one of the cues, make it more identifiable throughout. But again, structurally sound, all the layers are going to work together. Just some tweaking in the production of it. All right, how we doing? So we're halfway through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What do I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, it's about halfway through here. Let's try another one. All right, so I would classify this as a nice, really well done emotional theme, and I'm just going to jump right over here to the water to see what we have. All right, they sound like they're going to clash, be a little bit dissonant overall. But the more of the staccato nature, like these are very sustained lines. This would work really well as the water cue. The earth cue needs to have a little bit more of that bounce, a little bit like a kind of a poppy bubbly feel as they're uplifting and positive and singing the tales of the hero overall. So this sounds more like my adventure's over and they're rolling the credits and everything. I just saved the kingdom and everything's good. So, which could work very well for the emotional theme of the water cue. Let's jump over here to wind. Alright, this one's going to probably be a little too thin. The little chimes work. Probably needs a lot more in the lower range. This cue is meant to be a little bit unsettling and dangerous, and it's meant to be during a period of high tension and stealth as the player is creeping around. So add a little bit more danger to it, maybe a little bit more minor tonality, move things more to a lower range. You might be able to keep the lead line there, but add a bit more power and density to the low end. And the fire cue is going to be your action and your battle. This is way too kind of gentle and laid back. Lots more percussion, lots more energy, intimidation and strength and power. So work on the energy of the fire loop. Yeah, there's something happening probably in that choir of the water cue. So you could probably bring up the velocity of some of these instruments. Not only should it just be volume, but the power of the sample and the strength of the brass and the strings and the choir could probably be brought out a bit more. Oh, we didn't listen to it all together. Let's try that. Let's do this. Yeah, I can hear those three work well together, and then you just a little bit of dissonance comes in with that water cue, so I'm gonna watch out for the notes through there. All right, let's jump. That was first section. Let's jump over here. The levels here are going to concern me. Overall, looks like just kind of hit a limiter on the master output. And we'll just check out what that bounce sounds like. So the first thing would be the ensemble size. Again, if this was meant to be a group, a smaller group of performers, not small performers, but a smaller group of performers playing handheld instruments. Again, move away from a woodwind ensemble and just use a flute and a clarinet, and move away from a string section and use a fiddle or maybe viola, handheld percussion, those elements. The progression sounds like it probably work. Maybe just by looking at the waveforms and the meters, the sustained elements, just there's a little bit of staccato through here. I think it's a oboe in the background, playing those more staccato lines, and staccato parts could work well against some sustained instruments. Here's the wind cue. They sound quite similar. Watch out for any repeated instrumentation or string lines. Like in these two, the string lines are too similar. Let's bring the fire cue. Okay, strings. Okay, lots of strings. So this is going to make the separation and the theme and the aesthetic of each one of these cues difficult to work with. So more staccato elements move away from all the sustained strings, choose from different instrument families. The progression, what you present there, could work, and emphasize probably, if you're going to have sustained harmonic instruments, maybe some more staccato melodic lines, and choose different instrumentation across the different cues to allow for variation in each one of the themes that can also provide separation when you put it all back together. So let's try the next one here. All right, earth cue. So the progression and the instrumentation works well together. I was originally thinking, like, where's the kind of bottom half of the mix? And then I put both ears on and realized that the lower strings are in the right-hand side. And when you are working with a full orchestra, it works well to pan the different instrument families or sections to the correct location. And some, if not all, of the orchestral instrumentation of the contact library, and I think even the East-West libraries, are panned automatically. So, but when you're not using the full orchestra, you might want to balance them out a bit more. I typically worry about having things in only one channel. I think it's there very faintly in the left-hand side. But yeah, maybe balance those strings back out towards the front a bit. Move away from the repeating harmonic progression. The melody changes, but the bum 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 ba bum ba bum 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 bum. There's a little bit of change there, but once you get into it in the second part, it's a bit repetitive. So just to have a little bit more room for development, wind cue. All right. You could probably support this with quite a few more instrument layers, lower strings, lower brass. Again, your melody instrument is only in the right channel. Even listening with both sides, it just feels like it's on one side of my head. could probably also boost up the power of the instruments. There we go, we got some more power through here. So you got two great staccato melodic lines, maybe sforzando over here on the right, and because they're panned, it feels like in front of me, it's kind of a gap in the brass. So along with those more staccato kind of lines, having some long sustained lines, you got the tuba in there, but maybe some. You got the trumpet lines, so maybe some trombones and French horns, sustain lines that just sit on the chord and sustain all the way through to fill in the gaps between the staccato. So hits that chord, then the trumpets dance around, hits another chord, then so more sustain lines through that fire cue will help kind of thicken it out. All right, clarinet and the harpsichord work well together. A little percussion in there in the background. Cool. I like the lead line here. Maybe you could have a little bit more movement in the harpsichord. I mean, the chords are fine, but a lot of performance on harpsichord has some notes in moving from chord to chord. You basically are just hitting the chord changes. Bum, 2, 3, 4. Oh, what happened to my audio? It all dropped out. So most of those are small suggestions, tweaks to each one of them. Again, you got the basics of getting it all to play together. The staccato nature works well when playing, but as you mentioned earlier, with the staccato lines, it means you need to have more movement, and when you have more movement and layer together, they can kind of get cluttered, but I'd say if you left the melodies, but some of the more staccato harmonic chord changes, like that harpsichord, and there's some woodwinds in there that are just like chom, dun, dun, dun. Move those over to sustain, and that can give you maybe a little bit more room. All right, nice work. We'll keep going there and move on to the next. Percussion could come up a little bit. I like what it's doing there. I like the guitar line, flute, piccolo works. Yeah. I think that works nicely. Provides a good base and foundation. Let's do the wind cue next. The groove that I got from the earth cue and what I'm getting from the wind cue. Yeah, the rhythm here is throwing me off because back here I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. I guess it's just the syncopated rhythm of the, what is that? Some plucks. Or pizzicato or something. There's a harp in there. Even in the loop, that rhythm kind of throws me off. Alright, I think the brass works. I think the percussion works together. Oh, got some strings in there too. Maybe work on the mixes. The strings kind of get buried overall. And the water cue. Marimba in there. Some low strings. And some other melodic instruments I'm having trouble identifying. I think this works well. The kind of lower intensity nature of this cue, it's a little more gentle and subtle. Works well against the fire cue. Let's bring them in together. Trying to catch that rhythm here. Maybe it's the earth rhythm that throws me off, and I just heard it first. I think there's some layers in there that kind of clash when played together. It might be in the earth cue. I think water and wind work well together. The fire cue kind of is quite thick with instrumentation, and there's some layers in there that are going to clash against those. And now I'm thinking the rhythm of the earth cue is clashing against the water overall. So just some clarifying that needs to happen in there of some of the rhythms and the progressions to make sure that they're all fitting together. All right, next one. Taylor. It's probably the bongos in the earth cue. Sort of improvised the recording on that because I didn't really know how to make them sound the way I wanted otherwise. Yeah, did you maybe start on the earth cue, like write that rhythm first, and then maybe you went on and did the other ones? And I find myself doing that quite a bit, where I set up an idea, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. Cool. Let me mute those ideas, mute those tracks, and then go over here and start on this idea over here. And okay, that one works. And let me go and unmute and see how this works with that one. And well, kinda, sort of, they might work. And what I did over here independently works, but not when combined with this idea over there. So here in the chat, Taylor, yes, the others fit the grid better. That one was sort of abstract, so I'll just reel in the earth cue rhythms. Cool. Absolutely. That will work. All right, let's try the next one. We got 2 more here. And I think I'm good. So I'm going to say that string line would probably work solidly as a lead line, but there's nothing to support it. There's some percussion in there. There's a triangle. I'm trying to identify other instrument layers. Unless they're like all just playing stacked together. There might be multiple string layers, but I'm going to say that sounds like one instrument and some percussion. So add a couple other layers for density to support that, to kind of work against what that lead line is playing. Wind cue. All right, we got the choir here. Bass. Double bass or cello pizzicato. The pizzicato could come up a little bit in the mix, kind of a bit far back, or it took me just a moment for me to realize they were there. But again, I'd count the pizzicato as maybe a bass layer or lower register. Choirs fill up the mids, but maybe a lead line of some description, maybe a harp line, could work well against that choir. So the harp or some other, maybe you can use another pizzicato in a higher range that gives you the balance against the low end and less sustain overall. But fits nicely in the progression. Fire. Oh. It's like wondering where the choir was coming from. I need more sustain lines. It feels like there's some gaps in the mix. The drums are in there. You got a big crash. That's kind of a gap. And then they come back in. So I need probably more sustain parts. Again, an ostinato line from the strings to kind of keep that pacing going, fill those gaps. Trumpets creating a strong lead line. The brass supporting that. So more sustained energy through the cue. So the strings work well as a progression. Really would need an identifiable melody, something that is continuously moving throughout this particular cue. I'm gonna guess, let's see, didn't I say like this? Okay, so I said earlier that this earth cue works well as a lead, but doesn't have much in between it. So if I add this in, if I add in this one, like those two layers work well together because they have the more of the staccato lead line, or the more of the shorter notes and playback progression of that line, and then the water cue here provides more of that sustain that fills in those holes. And I'm gonna see if I can do that same thing here. If I did the fire cue, some of the bigger gaps, then the wind, which had more of the sustain. Then you have the choir holding that chord, and then the brass just comes in to kind of punctuate the changes. So mostly, I would say it is filling in the holes that you have, filling in the cues with a bit more instrument layers, and just taking what you have and expanding on it overall. All right, and we'll try one more, starting with the earth cue. Here we go. So string lines, some percussion, flute line. All right, the second half is feeling similar to the first half. The second 8 bars feels similar to the first, with the that kind of phrase. Similar throughout, could probably vary that. The strings, I'd move away from ensemble, move more towards solo instrumentation. Maybe a little bit more of the staccato. I'd say this is more of the sustain lines and can have that balance of staccato and sustain playing against each other. Strings just could come back a little bit to focus that lead line, or make it more up front. Wind cue. Ooh, I like this. Like the low end and the piano, and maybe that is mostly piano. Some piano percussion. Yeah. Definitely feels like something's about to happen, but it hasn't entirely broken out. A little bit repetitive, so maybe you just could explore that groove a little bit. Fire cue. Feels like a lot of this is pushing really hard against the limiter. You can kind of see how it flattens out on top. It's hard to hear the quality and the separation between the different instrument layers. The percussion feels way buried. I think what you're doing there works, maybe with some more staccato elements and less sustain. Through there, you could kind of give a bit more of a sense of that. Like this one over here, the wind one, had such a good sense of like a pattern and a rhythm to it. Kind of feel to it. This fire, though, feels like sustained. and those sustained elements are good as long as they are often there to support something that has a little bit more of that continuous kind of feel to it. So you're kind of working with instruments on different subdivisions of the beat. Something's sitting on the half a note, something's sitting on the quarter, something is sitting on the eighth note to provide rhythm and movement. Water. Loop. Yeah, watch the loop there. I might suggest against having choir in multiple cues, writing choir somewhere else. Or was that? I'm thinking of the other one. Never mind. But this could probably be thinner sounding overall instead of the ensemble brass. Just kind of a thin string-lined choir could probably occupy most of the harmonies. I think there's a harp in there. Again, I'm going to say a lot of it is the mix of which elements are most present. I would really just choose a strong melodic instrument in each one, make that the focus, and bring back the sustained in the mix the sustained elements, add a little bit of staccato lines to add some rhythm and pace to it, or just kind of a flow to it. Let's bring them all in together. Bringing them together, the levels of them and the sustained instruments are probably most certainly going to overload the master. So, but let's just hear what we can was kind of most present in the mix. Like that, the percussion in the wind is probably the strongest rhythmic element, and you could kind of work against that a bit easier, or a bit more consistently through the different layers. There's a piano line that's a bit more staccato. There's a harp line in there that's more staccato that can be brought out against the sustain lines. All right. So, we did a good job, made it through all of those. It should definitely give you a sense of everybody's different approach for the composition. We heard a lot of different good ideas there. Again, most of the issues that we were talking about were not directly in the composition. Every once in a while it was, hey, there's some instrument in there that might be clashing a little bit. But working from a chord progression, building the different melodic lines, and then orchestrating it out into the different cues, it looks like you got over the biggest challenge of this project, which is making it all work. And most of what we were talking about was, hey, fix this in the mix, or maybe try moving this instrument over here, or work on the kind of feel or the theme of that cue. But good stuff to listen to overall, and you can see generally how your cues and mix stacks up against all the different ideas and what works and what doesn't. So always good to have that. Nice work, everybody involved in that. And that'll dump us into our last round of assignments. And as I said earlier, you have climbed the peak of the class, and it's all smooth sailing from here. I think yesterday in class I said it's all downhill from here after you reach the peak, but it's not actually downhill. It's a nice smooth coasting towards the finish line. So our last two round of assignments are finishing out the previous projects that you were working on by doing the sound design for Angry Bots. And the sound design here is very similar in process to the sound design that you did with 2D Platformer, but of course, different sounds, different types of sounds. You've had the opportunity to play through Angry Bots and heard the original sounds. And we're going to talk about the custom sounds that you are going to design. Here's the PDF that you get with the assignment, and I suggest, like you did with 2D Platformer, that when you create your logic session, close this out, don't need this anymore, close. And we're just going to create a new session with one audio track. And I suggest that you go find the original sound effects from the game and import them into Logic to get a sense of how they look and what they sound like, and use them as a reference or a guide. So let me take the opportunity to do that. Here's a copy of Angry Bots. And we're going to right click and choose Show Package Contents. And by this point, you might be quite familiar with how this is set up and where this folder is, but actually I should do it correctly. Contents, you go to Data. Inside of Data, you go to Streaming Assets, and you place all of your music into the music folder, and these are all of the sound effects for 2D Platformer. There are a total of 22 sound effects. And we are going to reference those. Here's my Logic session. Here's all of my files. And I'm going to take these and drag them into a track in Logic. Use existing track. Place all these files on one track, yes. And then probably would go through this. What am I doing? And organize this, or not organize, but like separate it out. Make your life a whole lot easier. I'm not actually going to do this. It would be painful to watch me separate all these out. But here are all the original sounds of the game, or from the game. And I would then suggest you create a couple of blank tracks right below that. And build your own sound design from these blank tracks using the original sounds as a guide. So you know how long it is, how loud it is, what it sounds like, any sort of reference that you can have in how this is supposed to work. Of course, as always, mute that track before you actually bounce. We don't want the original sounds into your sounds. Then you would import all of your sounds into these blank tracks down here and build them up one at a time. I would suggest that you go find a lot of sounds. Maybe just spend an afternoon or one session just going to find all the sounds. This game it's a really techie sci-fi game, so it contains a lot of weapons, explosions, and kind of doors, like sci-fi doors, like Star Trek doors that open automatically for you. So go find similar types of sounds and bring in a lot of different source material and edit it all down to create your sounds. You've already found and hopefully used the nice library on Westar Music that you have available to you. Freesound.org can be a good resource for a wide variety of different sounds, or you can record your own sounds. Although I don't know how many things you're going to go out and blow up to create and record big explosions, so you probably turn to your sound effects libraries for those types of things. So let's see. Let's go ahead and listen to these sounds. And I am going to just double check my audio levels here to make sure. I don't know how loud these are going to be, but I think we can hear these. Hold on. How about this? Okay, let's see. Airlock door open and close. Let's just look at the doors. Airlock door open and close. Interior door open and close. Locked door open. This terminal hacked, which unlocks the doors. Then you have a lot of explosions. Every time, obviously, you beat or defeat a robot, it explodes. There's self-destruct. They shoot their missiles and weapons at you, and those explode. So you have destroyed explosions for Flying Buzzer, for the patrol mech. The patrol mech can shoot you, and its missile explodes. There's a rocket launch shoot missile sound. There's a spider when you destroy the robot. There's a spider explosion when it self-destructs. There's some shooting sounds. So weapons and explosions make for a good, fun sound design. Yeah, let's take a listen to these. Airlock door open and close. So those, you can search out things like pneumatics, hydraulics, servos, can give you these kind of door opening and closing kind of sounds. I mean, obviously you can type in door, type in sliding door. You might get your door to your porch or something like that, but you might find a variety of different ideas. Sometimes you can get away with reversing the close or reversing the open to get the close. So here's your open. Here's your close. You might not just it might not just be just reversing it. You might have to take certain elements and reverse it, and you might put a clunk at the end as it actually closes. Just some ideas. Exterior rain and interior hum. These are your ambiences. Rain. Sounds like rain. This rain doesn't, what is this? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. You probably don't need 30 seconds of rain, but you want a continuous loop. Same thing with hum. Right. This is another 30 seconds of literally just room tone noise. So it maybe doesn't need to be that long. I mean, notice those two files are much bigger overall than the rest of everything else. Destroyed. All right, here's an explosion. Flying buzzer when it's destroyed. Zap electric. This is when the buzzer fires its lightning bolt at you. So it's got that kind of electric zap sound. Alert. So this is the patrol mech. This is the big RoboCop-looking robot. Would be probably considered like a boss battle. The patrol mech, when it spots you or identifies you, it makes a little sound to let you know you've been targeted. Right? Little techie kind of sound. It has its own destroyed explosion. This is an absolutely massive explosion, which it probably should be, but it's pretty darn big. I mean, it's got its own little bit of distortion in it, and so it is the biggest thing in the game. It should probably be a big explosion overall. Footsteps 1 and 2. So this is it walking, the mech walking in your direction. They kind of cheated here, and they put the same sound in both of them. You probably do a little pitch shift or change from one to the next. Missile explosion. This is when explodes next to you. Shoot missile when it fires at you. Alert sound. This is, okay, now we switched over to the spider. These are the ones with the 4 legs that basically get close to you and explode. When it spots you, it has an alert sound. All right, when it kind of wakes up. I've heard some people do some really cool things with the alerts, both the spider and the patrol. Well, they'll actually do robot voices. And they'll say, target acquired. And they'll actually speak instead of just make a noise. Destroyed explosion. This is when you destroy the spider. This is self-destruct when it explodes right next to you, which I think is a horrible explosion sound, but there you go. Now, spider proximity. If you play the game, you get closer and closer, or as these spider bots get closer and closer to you, they beep, and they in proximity they go beep 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 beep, and the beep gets faster the closer it gets to you, so that you know, hey, it's right next to you, it's about to explode. The game controls the beeps and how fast they play, because it actually changes speed dependent on how close you are over distance. So here is that beep sound. Literally, it's one little tiny beep. And yours should be the same way. You shouldn't have anything that's really long, because the game will just stack it up and play it over and over again, and it'll become a washed out mess. So really short, really quick electronic beep, so then it'll go beep, 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 beep as it gets faster. We did self-destruct. Interior door open and close. Let's close. There's open. Locked door opening, which is, it's kind of boring. It's just a hum. And player hit. This is when you take damage. Player shooting. This is when you fire your weapon. Now, you should reference that original sound in the audio files for your weapon sound. Let me find it here. What did I do with it? This right here? No, what is this? Spider. Oh, that's the alert sound. That means, oh, here it is. Let's try this. Player shooting. All right, so when you hold down the left click button, it starts triggering this wave file and just goes around and around. I think the timing of these sounds are timed to the animation of the muzzle flash in the game. So you will see it and hear it at the same time. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 shots in here, equally spaced and set up to loop. You should probably do the same thing with your gunshots. And the last one, shooting is terminal hacked. Right? That is, you stand next to the computers, it hacks the computer, and allows you to open up the door. I've also heard some cool computer voices in here, just some really cool techie sounds. Maybe some, I could hear every once in a while some typing, and then it unlocks. Just a wide variety of different ways to go. So, interesting sounds, sound effects, sound design. Go find your doors and your explosions. Maybe work on those, and then go back and work on the little individual sounds. Bounce all of those files, format it according to the asset list. Again, there's screenshots for each one of the sounds, so you know what we're talking about when we reference each one of them. And down here we have the asset list. Lists out all the sounds, how they need to be spelled, and how to make them work properly for the game. All right, and our last topic here. Go away. There we go. Final delivery of everything. You will do one more video capture of your projects to be able to show off your work. This ends up being a discussion post. You upload your files to YouTube. You now have 3 games with your own custom music and sound effects. You might be working on revisions through this week, revise the palace composition, finishing out the sound design, and you will place your music and sound effects in the game, make it all work one more time, and do a final video capture of each one of them. And the games the games are yours to have and use, and you can always improve them and change the audio in them. And you can distribute the games to show off your work, your music and sound effects working in a game. There's no better way of demonstrating your work for a game than actually playing and showing off the game. So they are Mac applications that are freely available for you to distribute, post up on a website, put it up on Dropbox, and share the link, and show it off to folks. Put it on your website, put it on your portfolio. Future clients or employers can check it out, see what you were up to in a game. However, there can be some challenges and roadblocks when just using the game, or having the game assumes a couple of technical things. Number one is they need to have a Mac, and that's a pretty big one. If your client, a lot of game development is on PC, maybe your client doesn't even have a Mac. Having a Mac application becomes a challenge in that instance. So maybe their Mac might not be powerful enough to play games. These games really aren't all that taxing overall, and should be, hopefully you've had no technical issues of just getting the games to work and play back properly. But that could be an issue. I mean, who knows in a day or a week or a month or a year or whatever, especially with Apple changing their operating systems and updating things, and their computers change, and they'll take the headphone jack away from all of us and do all sorts of crazy stuff. Those sorts of things, there's no guarantee that this application is always and forever going to work. A video capture, especially if you have the video file and you upload it to YouTube, and basically you can share that around, more than likely a video file is going to play in all of your future computers and be around for quite a bit longer overall. It's sort of like I may not be able to recreate a Logic session or a Pro Tools session that I worked on 10 years ago, but I certainly have the WAV file and the bounce and or the video file or whatever it is. So this kind of gives you a final video capture that you can hopefully use to add to your demo reel or portfolio, and it is a great way to demo your work. Another challenge is, let's not even do the technical side. More than likely, your client or the employer is going to know whether they have a Mac computer that is going to be powerful enough to run everything. They're probably game computer folks, so they know how to play games and check it all out. But you want to make sure that the playing the game doesn't get in the way. That just playing the game, maybe they hate the game and so they hate your music, or something like that, or they love the game so much they forgot to even pay attention to your music, and it takes 2 or 3 times for them to actually get around to listening to anything, which is not necessarily a bad problem. But a video capture allows you to create a predetermined, prescribed demo video to show off exactly what you want. So I'm not grading you necessarily on the content of your video. Like, I'm not going to count every single sound and make sure the content of the videos is mostly there for you, and you want to be able to show off the best thing as possible, right? So you want to get the highest quality capture of everything. The main thing I'm concerned about is that you completed all of your music and composition and sound design. You made it work in the game. You formatted everything, bounced everything. It works and functions properly in the game. And you were able to do a video capture, a quality video capture of the video of the game and the audio of the game. And that you ultimately have something to show off. So you'll do that for all 3 games. You'll post it up on FSO in the discussion post so everybody else can check it out. Hopefully you can get it set up so that you actually embed the video in the discussion post. So, I mean, I guess if you can just click on a link, not that much different, but it's always helpful if you can just go through and click on different people's videos and hear everything and check them out. Comment on others, see what everybody else has been up to and what their final version of all this is. And I'm always impressed by the end of the month. We get 20 people in here with 3 different games and I mean, we've got like 60 different compositions that are pretty excellent all the way across. So it's always good to see it kind of all put together and out there in one place in one form. So what am I thinking? Instruction wise and step wise, there's nothing new here. You've done this before. You've done the final video captures, but it's kind of just wrapping it all up with a nice bow and giving the final version kind of a final exposition or final show off of everything that you've been working on. So let me know if you have any questions. If you are running into any issues, this would be the time. Certainly, if you've had any technical issues throughout the month, making the videos work or making your audio work in the game, or every once in a while it'd be like, hey, I got 2 out of 3 videos just fine, but for some reason 2D platformer did this or Angry Bots did something else, and you might run into any sort of issues, but please let me know if you have any of those that you encounter. So I think that is all we will discuss for this afternoon. You guys did great with the peer review. Got a lot of good stuff to listen to. Again, check out the archive for a full high quality stereo, full resolution version of everything. What else? Yeah, I think that's everything that we need to do. We'll meet up again on Thursday for our last session. And hopefully, if you have any questions, send me an email, send me a message, let me know. And other than that, I will see you again on Thursday. Thanks a lot.